Boxing Ego here. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon on the top of your screen to get notified when the latest new content drops. 1. Bomb Squad versus Anthony Joshua. Do you want to see it? Fuck yeah. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe button for the latest and greatest in boxing and fighting. Now, I've linked in the description box. Check out a great interview with Eddie Hearn. He's had a good, the last year was really popping for him, and he's already starting this new year in a great fashion. I like Eddie Hearn. I've interviewed him, had the pleasure of interviewing him on a couple occasions, and he's a cool dude. He's the type of promoter that you could probably see yourself actually hang out and have a beer with. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't really drink beer, but I would buy him a beer. Put it that way. Now, he did an interview with Sky Sports, again, link in the description, and he talked about a potential mega fight between Anthony Joshua, his fighter with Matchroom, and undefeated Deontay Wilder, 2 undefeated fighters, and he says that he would like to see that fight happen. I'm going to read a couple pull quotes and give my thoughts on this situation. Eddie Hearn says, anything can happen, but I love the Deontay Wilder fight. The Americans are starting to go mad for Anthony Joshua. Now, if you know, Joshua's last couple fights have been on Showtime, which was a great move for Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, getting him that U.S. exposure. He's already selling out in electric crowds. We know the U.K. crowds. We hear about it all the way in America. You could see it if you ever watch boxing and watch a Sky Sports event, like a big one. Crazy, loyal fans. I have to say that. Wish Americans were as loyal. Americans seem to hate their American champion, but I like both. I like Wilder and I like Joshua. He goes on to say, I would like him to fight Wilder. You never know what is going to happen in boxing. Anthony Joshua and Klitschko could have a 10, 11, 12 round war. Do you do that again or fight Wilder? Do you fight the Hay Bellew winner? You know what I mean? Those are obviously options. Anything can happen, but I love the Deontay Wilder fight. The Americans are starting to go mad for AJ, and they were talking about him all last week. He says Wilder against Joshua can be built up into a big, huge fight. 2 undefeated, fast, big punching heavyweights, but I think at the moment, the pure focus because of the toughness of the fight has to be Wladimir Dr. Steelhammer Klitschko. You come through and there's no turning back. It's big fights only. I love this attitude from Hearn because this is how I have to say it. Now, these are my thoughts. Anthony Joshua, he was doing what he was supposed to, and he was running through the ranks, and he was beating guys that he was supposed to beat, given who he is, given the fact that he's huge and diesel paws, given the fact that he's a gold medalist, that he has that freakish power. He was supposed to be doing that, right, against a lot of the early competition. But Charles Martin and Glasgow fought for the vacant IBF title, and it ended in a funky way. I think it was on the Wilder Spilka undercard or something, and really weird ending to that particular fight where you didn't really get to see much from Charles Martin. I mean, he was clearly winning the fight, but you didn't really see much from him because the Glasgow fell and twisted his knee up. He was losing the fight. He looked like the smaller man, and his power wasn't as significant as Martin. So what I'm trying to say is Martin was really an unproven champion. He was an unproven commodity. You can say whatever, but he was an unproven commodity just because it's not like even Joseph Parker, for example. Joseph Parker fought a really solid heavyweight in Andy Ruiz Jr. at home, went the distance, so he showed he could take Ruiz's power and no one got knocked down. It was a close fight, but he won that vacant belt. Like, we got to see him for 12 rounds. It was close, but he won. The judges gave it to him. He won. But the Charles Martin had a really weird ending, and it kind of prematurely ended because a guy got hurt, right? So you don't really get to see a fight. So Eddie Hearn and Joshua, they jumped on it because I talked to Eddie Hearn when I interviewed him after the Andre Ward Paul Smith fight, his fighter Paul Smith. He said that the Deontay Wilder fight could be big, but at the time, this was a long time. This was like when Joshua was like maybe 14-0 or something like that. This was a couple fights ago, and he might have been 15-0, 15 or 16-0. And Hearn, basically from the interview, it sounded like he didn't want to rush Joshua and put him in there yet, but they jumped on the opportunity because Charles Martin, they're like, man, this is a title shot. This is a it's not a proven champ. It's not a Klitschko, right? And they jumped on the opportunity. Very smart, because you've seen what happened. He knocked out Martin in what, 2 rounds? And now he has title defenses, which furthered his confidence and further built up his confidence and his esteem, and got a feel for it. He avenged a grudge match with Dillian White, a guy who beat him and knocked him down and hurt him in the amateurs, and was talking shit and came into the fight confident. So those were all good learning lessons and title defenses. Now we have Joshua, again, another really sturdy opponent in Klitschko. That's obviously the best name on his resume if he can beat Klitschko. You could say, oh, but he didn't look good in Tyson Fury, but Tyson Fury didn't knock him out, right? Klitschko ain't been knocked out since mid-2000s probably, right? So I like what Eddie Hearn did. I think they weren't in a real rush. Like when he was 14-15-0, they weren't going to put him in with Klitschko. But since that, they crept on the opportunity. There was an opportunity to get Charles Martin's belt, who is considered an unproven champion. Unlike Deontay Wilder, people say all this bad stuff. Oh, Wilder's a bum. He doesn't want to fight anyone in the top 10. Well, he's whatever you guys are talking about. But he's a threat. He's 6'7", he's powerful, and just like Joshua, he's had the opportunity to get a feel for his style and his confidence by fighting guys that he was probably favored to beat, some hometown fights, and that's what you're supposed to do to your champion. You don't just put your champion in there. Like Mike Alvarado, I think he had a championship belt, beat Brandon Rios. Brandon Rios had just stopped him. Then they had an immediate rematch. He got hurt in that fight. Alvarado ended up beating by decision Brandon Rios, top rank for his very first title defense. They put him in his hometown against Ruslan Provodnikov, right? You guys could say it's cherry picking or not, but my point being, who's mentioning Mike Alvarado as the guy to beat at 140? You know what I mean? And since the Ruslan Provodnikov loss, it's been downhill. He lost to Marquez. He lost to Rios again. He quit in the third fight, right? That's you don't do that to your fighter. Just like Mayweather Promotion said, we're not putting Tank in there with Lomachenko. He just had a step up, which was a champion, Jose Pedraza, and now we're going to let him build his confidence and get a fight. That's what you're supposed to do. I don't care. You could say for fans' sake, oh, I just want to see the best versus the best, but you guys got to be realistic to a degree. If a person like Tank Davis steps up and showcases what he could do on a high level against a champion, you can't expect his next fight is Lomachenko. That's not even realistic. Lomachenko hasn't even had that schedule. He's fought some good names in his short career as a pro, but it wasn't back-to-back. He didn't fight Orlando Salido, Gary Russell, and then Nicholas Walters right after. In fact, Top Rank kept him busy by putting him in there with some guys he was clearly, like on the Mayweather-Pacquiao, he's on the undercard. Somebody name who his opponent is without Google. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Robert Easter. He had a very tough fight against a guy with a 90% knockout ratio, Richard Comey, and he looked good in that fight, almost stopped Comey in the 12th round, got knocked down, battled back, showed what he can do. Now he has a fight against a guy who has some veteran experience, Cruz, but he should be favored to beat. It's kind of looking like it's his time, but you can't sleep on his opponent. Maybe has more experience or good experience too, right? That's what you're supposed to do, and that's exactly what Sky Sports, or not Sky Sports, Matchroom Boxing did with Anthony Joshua. Now he's ready for a Klitschko fight, because if he's not ready now, then I don't know when he will be. He fought against pretty much the weakest champion, Charles Martin, or the unproven champion, right? And then he fought Dominic Breazeale, who had trouble with Amir Mansour, so I knew Joshua was going to pummel him. I'm not going to say names and stuff, but I know people that know Dominic Breazeale from the amateurs, and this is no shade, but from what they told me, and I don't see why they had a reason to lie, they're not even in his division or anything, and they told me he was like, as an amateur, he won some fights that he really should have lost, and he was getting knocked down and stuff like that. So it came from a trusted source who's actually a boxer, to be honest, and that's what they said about his amateur career. So I knew Joshua was going to run through him. Eric Molina had already lost to Chris Arreola Wilder. So it was a solid fight, you puncher's chance, but Joshua had to be the favorite. So that's what you do to strengthen your fighter, because not only is it getting rounds in, pro rounds, it's also helping build their confidence if they're successful. And it's helping them get a feel for their style. You know what I'm saying? Because if you ain't been through nothing, then how are you going to react when you finally go? That's why I want to see Gennady Golovkin versus Danny Jacobs. Golovkin's clearly the favorite. He should be the favorite, and a lot of people are picking him to beat. But the intrigue is the fact that he's finally fighting somebody who's taller than him with almost as high of a knockout percentage, or about the same. They both have like 80+% knockouts, and they both are on a consecutive knockout streak that non-punchers don't have. You know, you don't just knock out 12 people in a row with the names that Jacobs has fought. Like, you're not gonna knock Sergio Mora. He didn't get knocked out by Shane Mosley, right? He didn't get knocked out by plenty of people he fought. So Quillen, you don't just get that. So that's why I want to see it, because I want to see how Golovkin responds if he gets his bell wrong. You know what I'm saying? And it has to be an opponent who's capable of pulling the trigger. If you fight Willie Monroe with 6 knockouts at the time, actually he hasn't had a knockout since the Golovkin, so he still has 6 knockouts, if I'm not mistaken. But he can't. The only thing he can do is try to outbox you, and Golovkin is exceptional at cutting off the ring. So most people, and he has way more experience, Golovkin does. So most people wouldn't favor a guy like Willie Monroe that they never really heard of with 6 knockouts to be able to outbox a strong, aggressive, non-stop guy with the chin for 12 solid rounds, especially when he's good at cutting off the ring. So that's my thoughts. You gotta there has to be some level of like danger, intangibles and stuff like that, and you have to go through something. So these title defenses are great for Anthony Joshua. You know what I mean? He gets the crowd behind him, build up his fan base. That's another reason. You build up his fans, now they want to see. And now that's why they're selling 80,000 tickets. If they would have fought, like, let's say right after Charles Martin, they would have fought Klitschko, then the fight would have did good, but who knows what it would have done. It probably wouldn't have done as great because you hadn't built up your fighter. You know what I mean? You haven't proven that this dude is a knockout artist. After he became a champion, Joshua keeps showing and proving that, hey, I got cracks for real. Everybody who stepped in has still lost. So that's another reason. You build up that fanfare by having title defenses. A lot of people don't understand the business side of stuff. And I'm not, obviously, certain fights like Pacquiao, Jeff Hearn, to me, that is a horrible fight, and it's hard to justify. And the only demographic you could maybe justify for is the Australian public. But the rest of the boxing world doesn't care for the most part. You can't say that with Joshua Klitschko. You can't say only the UK cares about that fight, because I don't live in the UK and I really want to see this fight, right? So you have to understand the business. It's not all about business or whatnot, but some things make sense. And if you have a youthful fighter, you groom them and get them to that level. You ever watch like a kickboxer movie? You always see Van Damme, or Bloodsport. You always see Van Damme, who he has flashbacks of his early training when he's a teenager. You cannot earn katana sword by stealing. I wasn't going to steal it. You're not gonna call the cops? Not if we make deal. What kind of a deal? Hey, teach me, train me, to honor you, Shidoshi. Y'all don't know about Bloodsport. To honor you, Shidoshi. Now, why don't you take your big stick and your boyfriend and find a boost to catch? Van Damme was my dude. Shout out to Van Damme, pause. But you watch those types of movies and you always notice they always have flashbacks of their early teachings. That's them being schooled and them being trained and them being groomed. That's what you do to your champion, in my opinion. So I love what Matchroom is doing with Joshua, because they gave him a fight with the champion. So you Charles Martin, it is what it is. Even though, like I said, he wasn't a proven champion, but it was a champion. You gotta, yeah. He obviously had to be in a position to be ranked to fight Glaskov for the vacant belt. So you know what I mean. You got to give him that credit at least. And then he had some solid title defenses with like a guy to beat him in the amateurs, Dillian White, a guy with a puncher's chance in Eric Molina, Dominic Brazil, who was taller than him and came into the fight confident. You got to give him credit. He was fighting undefeated fighters. Now it's the big guns in Klitschko. And if he gets past that, like Eddie Hearn says, and I love this, it's big fights. I mean, there's no reason to regress at that point. If you could beat Klitschko, then you the man. And especially if you stop him, right? Because I don't know if Joshua's outboxing Klitschko for 12 rounds, so I think he's going to have to hurt him and stop him. So just a great fight, Joshua Klitschko, and it could set up another great fight between David Haye Bellew winner. That's a big UK fight. It'd be big. David Haye just signed a promotional deal with Richard Schaefer. They're doing a joint venture. Or Deontay Wilder, like you guys seen in the title. Let me know what you guys think. Drop it in the comment section. Make sure you share the video, like the video as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video, is Ego signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.